meeting for September the 20th, 2023 to order. And so we'll go around with roll call. Anaskevich?
Here.
Gippin?
Here.
Peoples?
Here.
Lewis? Castle?
Here.
Costa?
Present.
Reed? Reed?
Oh, sorry, I thought you said Marie. Yes, here.
Richards?
Here.
And Mr. Fields?
Here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And I'd like to make a motion to approve last meeting's minute. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call. Anaskevich?
Yes.
Gippin?
Yes.
Peoples?
Yes.
Costa?
Yes.
Castle?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Boyd, yes. We'll move forward to the third item on our agenda, which is public comments. Public comments will be 30 minutes in total, 3 minutes per person. And we ask that you, as you do your comments, please remain respectful and appropriate for these chambers. Ms. Anaskevich.
Apostolate.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I have a few concerns I wanted to bring to your attention and ask that you would look at as the Citizens Oversight Board. I stated previously that Cuyahoga County had put a pro-slavery law in place through the safety process, and I hope that that doesn't transfer here to Summit County and Akron. And what it does is people who have been incarcerated are targeted by law enforcement, monitored, and get pulled over unnecessarily many times if they've been incarcerated. And I don't want that transferring here. Another thing is I don't want us to be distracted in this election process. Yes, we have gun violence, we have domestic violence, we have many violences, but we're losing babies every day by police, gun violence, by recklessness, carelessness, and people actually being unconcerned, because as the pro-life or the pro-choice people with the abortion becomes prevalent, people are more reckless with the lives of babies and children, and we need to be looking at that because we're losing children. In every federal election, a child is sacrificed and martyred in this country, whether it be black, white, or whatever color they are. And we need to be paying attention to that. And my third concern is, what do we do to monitor so that in a investigative process, the police are securely doing what they're supposed to be doing and not transferring negative energy across the airways? For instance, if a person feels targeted, what monitoring process do we have to make sure that the police are being honest with the lives of the people? A person, I just say as a woman, my being a woman, a victim of violence, I don't feel safe with the police because I don't feel that they know how to handle my matters securely as they should. So what process do we have in Akron and Summit County to make a victim of violence feel safe with the police? That's a very serious concern for me, because all we have is the police. Because the church can't do it. That's not anybody else's job, and I would like to see that done. And my final concern is I'm still concerned about racial profiling in law enforcement. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a blessed evening.
Thank you.
Anybody else, Ms. Anaskevich?
No, that's it.
All right, thank you so much. We'll close our public comment portion and we'll move to item number 4 on our agenda for this evening, and it's going to be a report out from Mr. Fields.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
For my weekly report, I'm going to stick strictly to the agenda items and submit the following. The number of calls in the last week were 12. The number of emails were 13. Number of in-person complaints received is 0, and as the board's aware, I still don't have a actual office, so that's the reason for the 0 in-person complaints. Number of complaints that were turned over to APD this week were 1. The nature of that complaint was that the complainant felt that the responding officers failed to investigate the altercation. They were rude and insensitive, even though the complainant suffered serious enough injuries to require hospital treatment. For investigative updates on any ongoing investigations, there were none. I'm actually unaware of what Mr. Young might have been working on at the time he went on sick leave, so when Sergeant Beck returns from vacation or leave, I'm going to get in touch with him for a complete update on what complaints we have open at the time. Completed investigations. To date, there have been 2, one on 9/5/23, which was returned unfounded. There was a second one on 9/12/23 that is dormant at the time due to a lack of response from the complainant. There were 5 complaints inherited as of August the 25th, and those 5 are still in progress as they're still within the 60-day threshold. Reviews conducted in the past week, none. At this time, however, I'm looking into a couple of webinars.
Mr. Fields, thank you for that so much. Was there anything that was emailed out to this board as far as your report out that we can kind of see or touch tangibly, like a piece of paper or anything?
Not at this point, but I can certainly prepare something.
Yeah, that'd be great. If we could have something for our records.
Okay.
That we can go over, that we can put down. The one you said there was a lack of response. What was that? It was a lack of response by whom?
By the complainant. I have a copy of the letter if the board would like me to read it.
It was a lack of response by who?
By the complainant, I'm sorry.
Okay, so the person that filed the complaint, they didn't respond
Police
to their own complaint.
Right. The police reached out to that individual several times and haven't gotten any responses back from him. On one occasion, the complainant refused to talk with the officer that contacted her, and they haven't heard anything else.
Okay. I think what might be a good tracking for us, Mr. Young, is to identify how many of those that we get as well, because people may file complaints, but also I think the follow-through, whether it's the lack of follow-through from APD or the lack of follow-through by the complainant, is going to be, I think, good data for us to know and understand.
Okay.
That we'll be able, as we move on, to be able to audit.
All right.
I believe, Mr. Chairman, I believe the spreadsheet that we created has that information on there for our yearly, and that kind of data, we have that so that when we do our yearly report, all that kind of stuff is on the spreadsheet,
Okay.
I believe.
All right. Mr. Morrison.
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Boyd. And so, I just wanted to give you the heads up, Mr. Fields, you probably saw 4 emails from me yesterday. I'm going to be forwarding you completed complaint investigations and completed use of force investigations. There should be about 4 use of force investigations for you to review and audit. They're going to come through me because during a previous email, Ms. Reed asked me to make sure, she asked about what would be included. I'm trying to make sure that everything's included, and so I'm just making sure you have everything you need to do it. So if you see an email from me, Craig Morgan, Chief Prosecutor, and then there'll be a series of attachments with each one. So you have about 4 waiting for you, and then as they get completed, again, use of force, complaints, 2 different things, and I'll tell you what you're getting in each one, but those are going to be available to you as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Maybe I have it wrong. I thought the spreadsheet, maybe I misunderstood what you asked him. You want a tally of everything, is that correct? Of all the complaints?
I think it's going to be important for us, that information that Mr. Fields just shared about, hey, we got a complaint, there was trying to be follow-up on the complaint, but the complainant is the one that is not responding. I just think that's good information.
Well-
What I was asking for is that on his report out, did he send us as a board a copy or email us a copy of his report that he just read?
We can, we have discussed that we are looking for him to basically upload his report into a folder, but absolutely at your request, we can have that available before our meeting and it can be sent out. That's
Oh, if you guys are going to have it uploaded into like a shared,
Yeah, it has to be, because a part of it is going to be, it has to go to the safety director, and then it has to be used by us to, for oversight and to keep track. But if anyone would like a copy before our meetings, we can arrange that and maybe just have him kind of close out everything on Tuesday so it can be available for us on Wednesday. It's completely at you guys' discretion.
okay, thank
And
you.
then there is a section on his report out form for miscellaneous information where he can add that information in that, to explain something further, rather that won't necessarily fit into a column.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Gippen.
Mr. Fields, I think you said that there were 5 complaints received, 1 turned over to APD, is that right?
No, I inherited 5 complaints. And those 5 complaints that I inherited are still within the 60 days, so they're still active.
Well, have you received complaints in the last 2 weeks? that are- One, and so, okay, so and that one went to APD. So
Yes.
there's none that answers my question. So I'm understanding there are none kind of pending your determination as to whether to turn them over or not. They've all been turned over.
They've all been turned over, yes, that's correct.
Mr. Fields, thank you so much. Thank you. As it concerns the 5 complaints that you inherited, are they complaints that can be turned over to APD, already have been turned over? They already have been
They
turned over?
already have been turned
Perfect,
over.
thank you.
So we're just waiting to receive those for us to review it.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Fields? Anybody? Thank you, Mr. Fields, for your
Thank you,
report.
Mr. Fields.
Move on with item number 5, our subcommittee report out. First would be governance and Mr. Bob Gippen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governance met a week ago and voted 3-0 to recommend to the board tonight that the motion to adopt a resolution to request the law department to prepare legislation approving the rules we adopted in July and asking you to ask the President of Council to favorably and expeditiously approve the legislation, recommended that be taken off the table for consideration tonight. So I will move that the resolution be taken from the table for consideration.
And Mr. Gippen, that is to send the current drafted rules as in and ask for legislation on the drafted rules as they are. Correct.
And I think the motion to remove from the table needs a second and actually needs to be voted on.
Oh, no, that's fine. I just want to make sure that's what we're doing. Okay.
Yes,
Are you making a motion?
I did.
Second.
Okay. Aniskevich?
Yes.
Gippen?
Yes.
Peebles?
Yes.
Castle? Yes. Costa?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Boyd, yes.
Mr. Chairman, if I could be heard in support of the resolution, support of the motion to adopt. We are, of course, here because the voters approved Issue 10 last fall, amending the charter and creating this board. My own sense is that the voters, in doing that, intended to strengthen and make more efficient policing in Akron, and that in doing it and creating this board, they wanted to see real change from what had been the status quo. And in particular, we have to assume we're aware of the legislation that had been adopted, proposed by the administration, that created a weaker form of this board, that was on the books when the charter amendment was adopted. And so I believe that they wanted to see real change, not just a continuation of the status quo, or even a continuation of the status quo pending the next negotiation with the FOP. I think that we, having been given the gift of sitting here, really, as the first board, I think we, in particular, owe it to the public to keep faith with that intention. Mr. Chairman, you've repeatedly and I think accurately have said that for this board in particular, as the first board, that it's very important that we lay a proper foundation for our own work going forward, and in particular for our successors. And I mean, there are a lot of sort of pragmatic aspects to that, you know, our choice of auditor, all those things. But I think that this particular matter about the scope of our authority is of particular importance in setting that proper foundation. And as it has come down to tonight with what's happened over the past few months, I think that our vote today, I think, you know, has particular significance, particular even symbolic significance to the public about this board. We have, of course, over the last several months, we've considered this issue of the scope of our authority. We've had a lot of input, including from the FOP, and we have twice.
Hi, Gina. Chairman Boyd and I are looking forward to attending the Global Ties event on Fridays.
Sorry about that.
Sorry. We have twice voted to take the position that we have the full scope of authority as described in the charter. And this resolution, it's in the form of sending those rules to the council, as you asked me, would have the effect of reaffirming those two votes that we previously took. And I would submit that we would be sending the wrong signal, and I think taking the wrong action, if we were to reverse our two previous votes by not adopting this resolution. We have known since the outset, really, when we began considering this issue, that the FOP took the position that the rules, as we, with the full authority, would violate would be in conflict with their agreement, more accurately, and therefore would violate that other paragraph of the charter. And we've known since they said it to us expressly that there might well be litigation over that issue. And we nevertheless, and again, unanimously and I think correctly, adopted the position we have adopted. We have had no elected official has come to us and said, you know, please, as a matter of policy, change that decision. You know, adopt some weaker form of the rules. That no one has come to us and said that. You know, we've heard a lot about potential litigation. I think we still need to assume that that is a possibility. Although I would submit that it is for the council to decide whether that litigation should, I don't want to use the word risk, but perhaps that is the right word. It is not for us, because that really is a policy determination. As far as the potential merits of that litigation, frankly, I've heard nothing more that would persuade me in support of the FOP's position. We've known for quite a while their position that because there is no reference to this board in their agreement, their current agreement, that the investigatory authority that we might exercise would conflict with it. I don't think that's true. As I've said every time we've considered this, that because we do not have the power to actually discipline. There is no change in the way officers would be disciplined that would be inconsistent with the agreement. I have to say that having heard, further matters in the last few weeks, as we all have heard, I think the position in defense of greater authority is actually stronger for two reasons. One, it's been brought, we've been reminded that the city, in the wake of the Walker shooting, asked BCI to conduct that investigation, which has been done. And apparently it is the city's intention to ask BCI to conduct all future similar investigations. And the FOP has taken the position that that is contrary to their agreement and has grieved it. That, in other words, it's in litigation, in effect. So the city decided to assert that position, potentially in conflict with the FOP agreement. I would submit that our position is not different. The other thing that I think is important that we have learned is that over the years, Mr. Young was involved in investigations. There was interaction about investigations on an ongoing basis. And he may well have brought information that he had learned to the table as these investigations were going forward by APD. And of course, the police auditor is nowhere mentioned in the FOP agreement, ever has been.
Mr. Gibbon,
Yes,
I want to give others an opportunity to comment, so I don't want you to, you don't have to elongate your reasoning. I want to be able to give everybody.
Mr. Chairman, with respect, I would like to speak in full, and then I think there's ample time for others to speak. I've given some thought to these remarks.
And Mr. Gibbon, I appreciate that, but we want to first of all respect the fact that we want to give other people a chance to speak. I think, Mr. Gibbon, we are full aware of why you're in favor for this.
Well,
but
Mr.
I
Chairman,
don't want to keep on going down the road of
Mr. Chairman, with respect, I would prefer to continue my remarks. If you are telling me I may not, then I will stop. I may ask to speak again.
Okay, I'm telling you, you may not. Thank you. Does anybody else have any other further comments about this?
If I may, I think we just voted to pass and move forward on this, so I don't know.
No, we voted to bring it back on the
bring it back on
table.
the table, okay.
Yes, we didn't vote to adopt them.
Thank you for the clarity. I think, Mr. Gibbon, I appreciate the summary of kind of bringing everyone up to speed. I don't think that those who may be joining us and watching may have the privy of understanding, I guess, the full context of exactly where we're at with respect to moving forward our rules in the position that they've been prepared in. But I'd like to echo your sentiments. I think that it's been very clear, based upon the response that we've received from the community who showed up to our meetings, that there is an expectation that this board is going to act and have some type of investigative capacity and functionality, no matter what that may be. So I appreciate you moving forward with that and all the work here and discussion here. And I am in agreement with the position that I think that Akron City Council, as the ones who crafted and created the legislation with respect to the powers that this board has, as approved by the citizens through the charter amendment, should be the ones to make the determination as to whether or not the powers that we've adopted under our rules fit within the scope of the power that we have. And so I am in support of it.
Further comments and discussion?
I would like to say something, Mr. Chair, if that's okay. I think the voters made it clear that they would like us to have a broader scope and authority and investigative powers. And I think we all want that. And I think in order to truly have a voice as a oversight board, it is important to have subpoena powers and investigative authority. Unfortunately, in that charter, the framers of the charter were intentional to mention that our actions were not to conflict with the CBA. I think it is important moving forward that the voters understand our position and what we would like, what we want, but what the CBA does not allow. And instead of hanging our hat on positioning, I think it's best to move forward with understanding that the block or barrier to us having investigative powers is the CBA. It is not what we want. It's not what, we of course want to investigate, and I think it would be important to have parallel investigations, largely because there's two people that could say, yes, the police did the right thing, or there's accountability, and I think it could be favorable for both. However, I do not think it is in our best judgment to go against the charter. We are here because the charter, and the charter explicitly states that we should not be in direct conflict with the CBA. And unfortunately, if we do decide to move this resolution forward, the positioning, whether or not the legislation is passed, will be in direct conflict with the CBA.
I have a question, and I may have asked this before, and maybe it's been answered before. What recourse do we have to revisit issues in the charter that may be a barrier to what we want to do, based on what the citizens of Akron are expecting us to do? Do we have any recourse? Do we have any way to revisit the charter, rework the charter, anything at all, ever?
In order to change anything in the charter, it would have to go on the ballot again. You'd have to get a certain number of signatures, and then we'd have to get it on the ballot. But I do want to say, I don't want to make this a charter issue. The charter aligns with the state laws. And so what the charter outlines is a perspective that would be shared on a larger state level. So it was fair that it was put in there, and while the charter made mention of our authority, even if the charter did not have that particular language, we would still be barred by the same.
By the state, and it's okay. Thank you.
I've got one more piece to add. While during my meeting with the Akron Law Department, with respect to some of the items under the budget, it was brought to my attention that there are some other items under our rules as we passed that could be problematic. Specifically, that under our rules as passed, there's a provision stating that that we have the authority to adopt our own procedures, to which the I guess the insight received was that could be problematic and in conflict with the charter itself, which requires Akron City Council to pass our rules and procedures. So I did want to bring that to board members' attention as we consider passing our rules in their current form.
I have a question, and it may be obvious and I'm just not aware. If we would be embroiled in litigation, does that come out of our budget? Do we have to fund that?
I don't think so. I think the law department would handle that.
I think there's 2 points to consider. The law department is your legal representative, as we were all here 2 weeks ago, and they gave you legal advice. They're also advising you of a certain course of action. So let me give you all an example. I spend my day taking 20 to 25 calls from police officers that ask for my legal advice. And they may run a series of facts by me and ask for my approval for charges. And then let's say they run a series of facts by me and I say, you know what, you just don't have it right now, you shouldn't do anything. Let's say they say, well, you know what, Craig was way off base. I'm going to go do it anyway. do we all understand the natural ramifications of that? Do we all understand that that's probably going to be dead on arrival? So you have to take it into consideration that you have people, and as Mr. Bremer said 2 weeks ago, they're ready to litigate on your behalf, but you have to let that soak in for a second. You have to understand the gravity of what you're asking. They're giving you advice, then to act in complete contradiction of it, that's a heavy lift for anybody. So, I mean, I think that's just all stuff that you need to consider as you weigh this.
May I speak, Mr. Chair? I don't know that we've, Mr. Morgan, you've spoken about what happened in executive session. I don't know quite how to respond to that, but I will say this. At no point did I understand the law department to be advising us what action to take. It did not do that. It advised us of certain legal considerations and matters that ought to be taken into account. When I was beginning to speak, I talked about some of them, including the 2 new matters that came up, including Mr. Young's previous involvement. But I did not understand the law department to be advising any course of action. At no point do I understand any elected official, including anybody on behalf of the administration, to have requested or advised us to take any action on this. Indeed, the law director came at one point months earlier and said it was a policy choice for us to make. This is a defensible matter. The charter may or may not prohibit these rules. With respect, Ms. Reed. My own view is that the correct legal position is that it does not prohibit this, and I've explained why or tried to. So it's a fair matter. It is not clear one way or the other. I think the better argument is in favor of the rules, which is why there might be litigation, just as there is litigation about using BCI. But it is not clear. And again, I think that if, as a matter of policy, that the city does not wish to take the risk of litigation, and it is the city that would be the party, not us, then that is something for council, for the elected officials to decide, not for us. Thank you for allowing me to speak again, Mr. Chair.
Any other comments? I tend to agree with Ms. Reed. I think that we received some information, and when I look at the charter, it's kind of written out in the charter, what it says, and so, information is information. And I think it's always good to get it, and for me, I think that the power or the authority, I would say, that we're looking for is going to be, I think, a continual process. And 2, I think that moving this forward into litigation, I don't know if it's necessarily the right thing for us to do right now. Simply because I think, it's like, being told information about something, and then when it's spelled out to you, it's like, are we moving in a wise way about it? Is kind of where I lean into and where I'm thinking about. So those are just my comments.
Mr. Chairman, may I say something else? No. Well,
Can I?
yes, of course.
Okay, so first of all, we have yet as a board, as a seated board, to get a complaint that we've been asked to, as the board, to look into. We have yet to get one of those complaints. Am I correct? No. Okay, yeah, we have not, the process that it goes by that involves our auditor and the police department and us. We have yet for that succession to dwindle down to where it actually is handed to us and say, okay, we need the board to look at this complaint. So we haven't even gotten that. We haven't gotten our first complaint to even look into yet.
With respect, the complaints we've received since we were seated, all in theory could have been investigated while the department was investigating. We chosen not to do that. In part, we have not had the resources, but even the complaint that has just now gone to the department, under the rules as we've adopted them, we could determine to investigate ourselves independently. So it's not that the issue hasn't come before us. It could be there if we wanted it to be there.
Okay, but having been myself a federal investigator, I don't think that that's good practice, to have two legal entities investigate the same issue at the very same time, because information could get convoluted. One witness could say one thing in conflict of what another witness says. It would kind of sort of be bedlam with respect to how investigations take place. So that, and there is an internal affairs. So, you know, even if there's a state and federal investigation, normally the federal investigation takes over after the state is completed. So I don't see, I just think we would be causing ourselves more problems if we even tried to investigate an issue, a serious issue, at the very same time the police are investigating it. That's just not, it's not prudent, and it's not common practice as far as investigations go.
I just want to clarify, when we were talking about investigative power, we do have the ability to investigate, just not a parallel investigation. It has to be once the investigation by APD is complete. And so when we use language, I think it's important for us to understand that our resolution is requesting for parallel investigation. We can investigate various cases that are brought before us, with the exception it has to be done and should have always been done, regardless of what Mr. Young did appropriately or did not do. It was always supposed to be investigated post the investigation by APD. Also, during the investigative process by APD, and I just want to give the public and some of the board members just a little more insight on what we're talking about. Mr. Young and now Mr. Fields, they do have access to track the investigation. They do have access to oversee various processes. It's just the idea that you can't go interview witnesses. You're not going to be going to the crime scene, collecting evidence, and so forth. But with that being said, I think we're acting as if though we just have to twiddle our thumbs and we're not doing anything and we can't ever investigate. And I just think we're kind of looking at this through a skewed lens. We do have investigative powers, but they occur after APD has conducted their investigation. To Donzella's point, that is no different than what has just happened in the Jalen Walker case. After APD conducted their investigation, then they came in. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for that time.
See any further discussion? Mr. Gippen, you want to move forward with a vote to keep the rules as is, or to, what are you looking to do?
Well, I've moved the adoption of the resolution, which would ask the law department to prepare legislation approving the rules as we have adopted them.
Okay, so the vote is, for us, do we want to keep the rules as they are written, or do we feel like we want to go back and change any of these said rules?
Well, that's implied. I mean, if this resolution
Okay.
doesn't pass, then we'll have to figure out what rules it is that we
Okay.
will approve instead and take to council.
All right. Ms. Richards.
Could I ask that the actual, I think it's just a very short paragraph that we're talking about, could be read to us again?
I'll read the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Gippen.
Do you want me to read the whole thing or just the operatives? All right. The operative two paragraphs are: the chair of the board, the chair, shall communicate to the director of law the board's request that the law department draft and submit to the council the legislation to approve the rules. The chair shall communicate to the president of council the board's request that the legislation be considered by the council promptly and favorably. The term legislation is to approve.
Mr. Gippen, I don't think that's what she's talking about.
No, I was talking about the language of giving us the power to investigate that we've already voted on. I just wanted.
Oh my, from the rules as we adopted them?
Yeah, just the part about.
Well, I'm going to have to do this from memory. I don't have that in front of me. I can pull it up.
I think
But Ms. Richards, I can tell you how it's in general phrased, and it appears more than one time in the rules. The charter talks about shall investigate, all right? The rules say shall investigate at any time, or may investigate at any time, a complaint from the citizen, et cetera. So it is that phrase, at any time, which is instead of only after the department has completed a process, which is, of course, the current process is after the fact. The rules as we've adopted them would be at any time, not necessarily after the fact. In other words, I would argue that's the change that the charter intended.
And let me just say, and I totally understand that, Mr. Gippen, but, you know, because it would go against the, FOP's rules or charter, whatever it's called, whatever they call it, CBA. If we try to do parallel investigations, even though it stipulates that through their rules that we cannot, but if we force the issue, wouldn't that put us in constant conflict with Akron Police? And while we're trying to build a bridge with Akron Police, and yes, we want transparency, and we'll have that based on the parameters that we already have set forth to go by. But to create something that's going to always constantly put us in conflict with them, I'm not sure that's a good idea to do that. When one of our goals is to mend the things that have gone on and try to work in concert, we know that at times they're going to be in their corner and we're going to be in ours, but to create a system where we're going to always be fighting with one another, I just don't think that's a good idea. I don't think it's prudent.
Mr. Chairman, this is not about ourselves and the Akron Police Department. If there is to be oversight, there is the potential always for some, call it difference of view, and that's implicit in oversight. The real issue is the relationship with the FOP. We are, the 160-something oversight board in this country. For better or worse, there has been resistance to this sort of board by the national FOP and its local branches really relentlessly. And the FOP fought the charter amendment. It is, obviously we have, it fought how this board would be constituted. They came in here and they spoke as they spoke about the potential for litigation. This is just part of the reality of policing in America, that there is a tension between the apparent desire of the public, as expressed in our issue 10, and the resistance to that by the FOP. It is just inherent, and it needs to be worked through. And I would submit that by backing off on this, we better be careful, because if we take this position backing off, it may be very hard to come back from it. And we may find that other things we want to do, such as the investigation of the department, the review that we're going to talk about, we may find the FOP takes the position, well, even that violates their agreement, because it it might cause change that wouldn't be pursuant to the agreement. It goes down a dangerous path to reverse ourselves on this. I hope if we do that, I hope we do not, but if we do it, that the community in fact will understand what we've done. I'm not hopeful about that. I'm not hopeful. But if that is how a majority feels, that is what we will do, and we will move on.
Mr. Giffen, you're making it sound like we would never do any investigations at all, and that's just not true. We will be doing our own investigations, but we'll be doing our investigations once the process is completed and the investigation comes to us, for us to then do our investigation.
Yes, we may do that, and that may put us in conflict with the police because we might well be.
Then it does,
coming.
but to try to investigate at the same time they're investigating, that's what we're talking about here. You know, that doesn't even to me make sense to have two investigations going on at the same time on the same issue. You wait till one investigation is over, and then we pick up when that investigation is over, and then we reinvestigate it.
I understand that, but that would be a matter of how we might choose to proceed. I would submit that it is better for us to assert the authority that the charter plainly gives us, and then choose to use it prudently or not.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, it's the language of saying to assert the authority that the charter plainly gives us. That's opinion, that's conjecture. The charter tells us that we should not do anything that's going to be in direct conflict with the CBA. A parallel investigation is. We've been presented that information. We've been able to sift through it. I understand that we might have different opinions, and as you know, Mr. Giffen, I respect your brain more than you can imagine. Unfortunately, this is just something we differ on. I do believe the charter makes reference to the CBA in order for us to comply with the CBA agreement. And if you see it differently, I respect that, but I disagree.
So to address Ms. Richards' request, under our rules as prepared within section, I'm sorry, everyone, under rule number.
And while you're looking that up, I did share a copy via email with all board members of the rules, so you guys have that to view as well.
Thank you. Under rule number 4E, section powers and duties, the specific provision that we're talking about right now reads as followed. The board and the Office of Independent Police Office Auditor shall receive, investigate, and report and make recommendations concerning complaints submitted to the board or the Office of Independent Police Auditor or to the Akron Police Department as set forth in these rules and procedures. The Office of Independent Police Auditor shall provide regular reports to the board as set forth in this procedure regarding the filing, status, and disposition of each such complaint. The operative thing that is at issue right now that in our discussion is the word investigate as it falls, and it fits within that provision that I just read.
That was the rules, Mr. Costa, that we drafted?
Yes,
Okay.
and approved.
So based upon the insight that Ms. Reed shared, which I appreciate everybody sharing their insights, I look at it more as section 2 under E. So where it's saying it can investigate at any time. I think that's where our conversation has kind of taken a turn to look at that language right there. So I would take a second to look at section E2.
Thank you. That section reads, the board and the Office of Independent Police Auditor may, at any time, conduct investigations of complaints, and the board may make reports and recommendations to the mayor and city council concerning them. The board and the Office of Independent Police Auditor shall also have the authority to review the results of Akron Police Department's investigation of complaints to evaluate whether the investigations were complete, thorough, objective, and fair, and the board may report and make recommendations to the mayor and council accordingly. Such investigations, reviews, evaluations, reports, and recommendations shall be undertaken as set forth in the procedures.
We keep referring back to the charter language that tells us against that. Do we have that? Can somebody pull that up?
Mr. Costa, was that one of the documents that you shared with us earlier? I think it might be linked in the email that I sent everybody prior. If you look under the Oversight Board legislation, we have the charter in that document.
I have the charter up,
Can you email it to?
not easily. I took it from, not easily. What is said, the OIPA, which means Office of Independent Police Auditor, and the board shall provide external and independent oversight and review of policing practices within the city of Akron, Ohio. Such oversight shall include, but not be limited, to the receipt of complaints from the public alleging misconduct by members of the Division of Police, the investigation of alleged misconduct by members of the Division of Police, and the reporting of findings and recommendations concerning alleged misconduct by members of the Division of Police to the mayor and council. Upon a vote of two-thirds of the board and OIPA may, on its own initiative, conduct investigations of the operations and policies of the Division of Police and of police officer conduct, and report its findings and make recommendations to the mayor and council. That is the phrasing. There is nothing said about whether that is to be only after a department review, or may be, as it is in the rules, at any time. I would submit that the language as written, setting aside the FOP agreement issue, would mandate that authority at any time. It is only the FOP agreement and whatever its significance may be that might alter that reading of it, that conclusion.
Ms. Reed, do you have up where it talks about within the charter?
I'm looking for the direct language. We were presented that information, so I'm trying to find it now. But there's more explicit language about that we should not be in violation of the.
I believe you're looking for section I under, or item I under section 2. It says the sections shall be interpreted and applied in a manner that is consistent with the terms of any relevant collective bargaining agreement.
Thank you, Caitlin. Yes, so section I, specifically with the terms of any relevant collective bargaining agreement.
Yes, I mean, if indeed our rules would be inconsistent with the bargaining agreement, they would be invalid. So the legal issue is, are they inconsistent or not? And I would submit that is not. I respect your view as well. I think there are two views. I have my view. It's more as a matter of policy. I think we should now stay with the decision we've made twice and leave it to council as to whether that matter ought to be litigated or not.
Mr. Chair, I think it would be a disservice to suggest just because we've voted on rules twice that we should just move forward with it, especially when in between that information, in between getting the information then and making those votes, to today, we are armed with more knowledge. I don't think we should just stick to a decision just because we made it then. In between then and now, we are more informed, and we can make a more educated decision tonight. And I think that's going to be on an individual basis. I don't think it needs to, we don't need to continue to belabor this. I think all of us were given enough information to make an informed decision based on what your opinion is, to interpret the language of the charter and our rules and whether or not we should move forward. Again, I do not feel it would be in our best interest to violate our charter by where it says that we should make sure that we don't do anything that would conflict with the CBA. We're here because of the charter. And it's not that we don't want to have the power to do parallel investigations. But unfortunately, if we move in that direction, our decision will be in conflict with the charter that put us here.
I don't believe as a board I believe as a responsible board, we should always, no matter what we do, we're going to have our battles. We know that. That's a given. But I don't think that we should, put ourselves in a position to invite lawsuits against us. Knowing when we had forewarning through the charter, that type of thing, the law department, I don't believe it makes sense to invite a lawsuit against us. I think what makes better sense is to continue to work through it in a way where we can get done what we want to get done for the citizens of Akron as best we can without inviting a lawsuit against us. And again, we still have yet to have a complaint come down the pike based on the process that we all know it goes by and then lands on our desk. We have not yet gotten that.
I want to implore really quick that moving forward, we keep in mind maybe getting some research and some evidence that shows the benefits of running a parallel investigation and present that to our citizens. And we absolutely, if we find in favor of that being beneficial for us moving forward, we need to continue to promote that the collective bargaining agreement, which is up to be discussed and modified next summer for 2024, I believe, that I think that should be our focus, not just making rules, but making sure that we can actually get buy-in from the FOP to benefit the citizens of Akron.
I agree. I was just going to say the same thing before you said. I was going to suggest for us to do a little bit more research and see where that gets us.
Oh, this is interesting. Have we spoke with the FOP with respect to the upcoming collective bargaining agreement? I guess I'm just wondering, and Mr. Gippen, this was actually your idea that I think was pretty brilliant. And the transactional attorney in me always likes to make a deal rather than see anything go to legislation, but litigation. I'm wondering if there's room for an opportunity for us to touch bases and explore how this board and FOP could work together as envisioned under the new contract prior to us taking any specific position and whether or not there might be any room for negotiation. Now, part of me is skeptical because we heard very clearly the FOP's stance with respect to any investigations that occur while an APD investigation is ongoing. But I think that in the spirit of the purpose of this board, in terms of building bridges between the community and the Akron Police Department, I guess I'm wondering if it may be prudent for us to specifically try to reach out to the FOP to have a discussion about what some type of compromise could look like under the new agreement. and I'm just kind of throwing that out there from a sense of wondering. I think there are some other things under our rules that could use some additional attention. And so I'm a little torn right now, but again, I would be in favor of us at least seeing if there might be some opportunity for us to reach some type of agreement with respect to the future collective bargaining agreement with the FOP.
Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Just, please, 1 second. I just want to answer Mr.
and so do I.
I just want to answer him.
As we've, reported back to the board, there was I thought, a very productive a private meeting with the FOP leadership and their attorney quite some time ago, which they invited. And I personally, Donzell and Kemp would have to speak for themselves, but I personally came away from that meeting optimistic, surprised and optimistic that there might be some middle ground, that we could find a way to, to avoid a conflict. And this was before the rules really started getting drafted. And then, before there was ever a resumption of that discussion, the FOP came here. I was not here, but you all, rest of you were, and said what they said. A very strong position, and not apparently one inviting middle ground. In the last, Clay Cozart came to the two roll calls. That I was at the one alone, and then Donzell and I were at the other, and we had some good informal conversation with him. I think it's possible that we could find a middle ground. Frankly, I think that what was gone on over the past years, where Mr. Young was, in fact, involved on an ongoing basis. It's not that he just stood back and waited for an investigation to be done. It's not what happened. It's not what was happening. There was a good constructive process. And you can get into semantics about was that investigation or not. But I think there's a useful way in which our staff, we talk about the board, but none of us should be doing investigations. But when we have full staff, professionals, that they could be playing a very useful role. I think in the major matters as it's ongoing with APD. In other words, I think this need not necessarily go to war. But I also think that if there's going to be a negotiation, it is better to negotiate from strength, which is why I personally would want it to hold to the position I think is personally correct, respecting Ms. Reed's position that that's not the right interpretation, respecting Ms. Anachevich's view that it's not a good idea whether we have the authority or not to do parallel investigations, respecting all that. I would like to see us take the firm position, the one I think is the correct position, and go into a negotiation from that stance, assuming City Council would approve our rules. They may not. But I would rather go into that discussion with these rules that we already adopted, reapproved, if you like, tonight, and then hope that we can figure out a way to avoid litigation now, and maybe then get everything set in the way that everyone wants it set in the negotiation next year. I fear that if we simply back off because we've been threatened with litigation now, which again, I think we could win that litigation, leave that aside. But if we back off now, I think we may see further push on further issues, and I think our negotiating position is all the weaker.
I was just going to say, if you and Mr. Gippen missed the meeting that I chaired where the FOP and their representative came, and they seem to be amenable to, I believe in August, they start negotiating their CBA contracts again. And I believe Mr. Cozart said, yeah, we could talk with them, when their negotiations start to, happen again, that they're amenable to talking to us. So, that's, to me, progress, however little it might be, but the fact that they're willing to talk to us about what we maybe would want from them in their collective bargaining agreement, I think you know, we should adhere to that. And I believe they said they start, they go, their CBA begins again in August. I would have to check with him to see, but they start negotiating again in August.
Mr. Chairman, the only comment I'd make is that we need to be careful. The negotiation is on behalf of the city and conducted by the city negotiators. They are our team. That doesn't mean we can't have conversations with the FOP. I would think even now, again, I think we might find a middle ground even in the next year or so to figure out a way to go forward with this together. But we cannot be negotiating around our own negotiators.
I understand that. I'm saying that they're amenable to talk to us about what we might want.
Yes.
Okay?
Okay, we've had discussion. Do we all feel comfortable with moving on with the vote with 2 absent members?
I think we should wait till we have a full board.
Okay.
I'll move that the resolution be put back on the table, Mr. Chair.
I'll get a second.
Second.
Aniskevich,
Yes.
Gippin,
Yes.
Castle,
Yes.
Costa,
Yes.
Richards,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Boyd, yes. We're going to now our Human Resources and Finance Subcommittee.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry, you had more, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
we do have another item of business.
My apologies.
The Governance Committee has also been actually, this is what we actually have been working on, not the rules, is this, review and process that we've talked about, 2 weeks ago, looking towards our report next year. We had further conversation about it at our meeting last week. We're not suggesting a resolution at this point. It may be that procedurally that might be necessary at some point, but I think the committee is comfortable at this point with the 5 topics that had been called out that we would actually focus on, and would, again, informally, would like to just to make sure that that is consistent with what everybody wants to do, and then really begin the process of dividing out the work. In other words, which of those topics ought to fall. Probably they need to be in committees, just for the sake of clarity, not ad hoc working groups. But putting those in the appropriate committees and beginning the work. So that's why we wanted to bring it back tonight, to hopefully see if we have a consensus that this is how we want to proceed on these topics, and maybe talk about which committees ought to look at which topics.
Any further discussion?
I mean, just to continue it, just look at the topics. You have the document, but there's a topic about culture of the police department, about diversity, particularly in terms of hiring, retention, and training, and because of we had there was some discussion of this in community engagement the day after, but I think that Ms. Lewis would be comfortable with those 2 topics, falling in that committee. There's one of the other topics is the complaint investigation procedure within the department. I had some conversation with Mr. Peoples about his actually activating that committee investigations committee that was created, and taking on that topic. Use of force might well be a topic that would be taken up by governance, and I'm missing the 5th topic. But that one, likely, so my recollection is that would probably also be a governance topic.
No. Go ahead.
No, when we met last week at the subcommittee, we talked about maybe having some law students perhaps do some kind of research for us. Brandon, do you you know, you can comment on that if you want, but, you know, it's only 9 of us, and this is a great idea for research. I think it's a fabulous idea, but it's definitely labor intensive. There's only 9 of us. Most of you all work full-time. In fact, I think all of you all work full-time except for myself, but I do have a full life. So I had spoken to Brandon last week about maybe this is something that maybe some law students might be able to volunteer to do as internships or, you know, somehow. I don't know.
So just to take a step back, the work that's been going on in governance with respect to our annual report that is going to be put out is been a really intentional process, and we've tried to capture some of the various areas where additional research as it relates to the work that we do as a board is needed as we communicate out to the community what we've learned, but then also the recommendations that we think is needed. Now, with respect to some of the recommendations, we have began working with the University of Akron Law School's social justice course and some of their student research teams to assist and aid in some of the research gathering process. But I think we need to be incredibly clear that at the end of the day, this will be a report that we bring forward based upon the work that we do, and that the report that we produce at the end of this year needs to reflect and tell the story of the things that we've learned and that what we've been through. And so I think that in governance, we've been super ambitious because we recognize there is a lot that we deal with and that we touch, that we've learned about, and that there's room for growth with respect to recommendations and insight that we can bring forward to the administration. But the reality of actually diving into it and us capturing all of that is going to be a challenge. And so, but I think that, you know, we do the best job that we can do. I think we tell the story of what we've learned through the past year, and I think that we tee up recommendations in areas that we want to see the administration look into, and maybe even things that that we will address kind of more fully in our work towards next year. So that's just a little bit my perspective with respect to where we stand at for the topics that have been teed up as to areas to be covered in our annual report to be issued at the beginning of next year. So the first quarter of next year, I should say.
So, Mr. Giffen, I like the topics. Are you looking for us to pick out the topics we want for? And then, too, I have another thing. There's some of these topics, it just came to my mind about, is some of these topics birthed from some of the work that we did with Ms. Green?
Not particularly.
Oh, okay. All right.
You know, at the
'Cause I
fifth,
know we talked about like annual report, end of the year stuff,
Yeah.
and that as well. And so I didn't know if this was totally separate or.
this is pretty separate. I mean,
Okay.
I think what we were talking about was the report of our activities, which
Gotcha.
is a separate piece of what we would report on. The fifth topic is the FOP agreement.
Okay.
That's the one I forgot. And as I'm looking at it, I think that pieces of the diversity topic, particularly as they might go to recruitment and retention, might well fall to HR, you know, as well as to community engagement, just as a way of splitting the work. FOP agreement, I assume, that was the other one I assumed would be primarily in governance.
Okay.
But we sort of, what we're really looking for is consensus that this is how the board wants to go, and accepting this tentative sort of allocation of tasks, understanding it's in play. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I like the topics. I think that keeping some of the topics in line with our committees is really good, because now each committee can add a layer of report out into the ultimate bigger report. So that makes sense to me. I think that's really good that we do it that way. That way, I think to Ms. Anaskevic's point, it doesn't fall solely on governance, you know, but it's, you know, how are we all, from a committee perspective, taking some of our bases in some of these 5 areas, because I think each one of us can add something to that. So if these are the 5 areas, we're not voting on this, but this is what governance has brought to us, saying, hey, we believe this is what we should focus on, correct? So we're not looking to vote on these things. Awesome. Good.
And I'd like to add, Caitlin had a really awesome idea that this could be a really cool opportunity for us with respect to these topics to get community engagement involved in terms of us having some conversations with respective community stakeholders as it relates to potential recommendations to be made. We realize that we're not the experts. There's a lot of people in the community who have thoughts, insights, and expertise in some of these areas with respect to policing practices. And there's been a lot of offers for help with respect. Everywhere I go, when I tell the story about the work that we're doing and just how labor intensive it's been, all that I've heard is, I'm praying for y'all and let me know what I can do to help. So I think this is an opportunity for us to create community conversations around some of the themes that we've been hearing throughout the year, and let those inform the recommendations that we'll bring forward under our report.
Katie and I brought that up in community engagement and got a very good response from Mr. Peoples and Ms. Lewis, who were also there.
Anything else, Mr. Gippen, as far as your report?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gippen, and your team for the governance subcommittee. We're going to move forward with human resources with Ms. Richards, and also finance with Mr. Costa.
Okay, so I will take lead. Earlier today, I distributed a year-to-date budget to the members of the board. I believe I also gave out physical copies as well too. This was compiled based upon the request to do a cost analysis as to what additional board compensation could look like. And so I think I broke that up into almost two separate questions. First, well, I guess three. First, where are we at with respect to our current budget? Two, what could compensation look like under that budget? But also three, what is the legality of increasing compensation under our existing budget? So I'll try to tackle those within those three orders. If you look to the second page, at the very, very bottom, the remaining budget of the year, it shows that there's $219,000 that is remaining under our total budget. Now, I'd like to highlight that $112,000 of that is reserved specifically for full-time labor, and that does not account for, while we have earmarked it, it does not account for the additional $23,000 that could be encumbered if we renew Mr. Fields' contract. So in the event that happened, that would actually be more like, that's going to be more like $196,000 of that's remaining, and 121 of that would be specifically reserved for labor, which would leave the board with about $75,000. Now, this is the hard thing about doing a projection or analysis, because there's a lot of assumptions. Now, this doesn't account for the pay that we're going to be paying out for the rest of the year to our new admin 3, nor does this account for what we could be paying out to an auditor if we hired them based on the rest of the year. So I'd just like to earmark those things with respect to the first point. As it relates to board compensation, I had a really cool opportunity to have a discussion with the law department, and it's my understanding that board compensation is, in the city of Akron, is an exception, not necessarily the norm. Boards are compensated, and members that serve on various boards in the city in a range of $25 up to about $100 per meeting. There's no cap on board compensation that I am aware of, but as I understand, the board meeting schedules generally will dictate the cap that will be imposed upon a board. So if a board is set to meet once a month throughout the year, then that indirectly imposes a cap of about $1,200. I wanted to also address, I think some members had raised that under the mayor's initial legislation. Okay, yeah, I wanted to address the fact that there was not $12,000 at any point that had been allocated as the mayor had envisioned a potential board, but that no member would receive more than $1,200 on an annual basis based upon compensation for board service for meetings that would be required to be attended to. So I wanted to make that point of clarification as well too, and I'm happy to, I guess, address any other questions, but I don't think, and it's tough because I guess the ultimate remaining balance of our board budget is going to be largely contingent upon whether or not we hire an auditor this year, when they start, and what that compensation is going to look like. There are remaining costs to be encumbered that under the budget, as well as us sending members to the NACOL conference, which I'm sorry, I forget the acronym every time, but it is the National Police Oversight Board, like coalition or collective. There will be money to come out of that, as well as to compensate our strategic planner, as well as for just any community events or engagements that we do have. So I just wanted to bring that to you all's attention. Again, it is my position that this board has not functioned yet as it was intended to. That the labor that we've taken on has been extensive, largely because we have not had employees, and that I do not believe that this board and the work that we're going to have to do is going to be nearly as labor intensive once we get on the employees that we do have. Now, that being said, I think that, you know, there could be opportunities or windows with respect to subcommittee meetings. We've been meeting like pretty frequently with respect to whether or not board members are compensated for subcommittee meetings. But I think the reality is that it was the expectation that people donate their time, talent, and treasure to an extent with respect to the engagement on this board. And so that's my position. I don't want to let that dictate anybody else's views, but I wanted to bring this information to your attention as I understand it, and then allow the board to move forward at that point. And one last piece is that I do not believe, I'm still waiting on an answer back from the law department as to, I think clearly the board would need some type of external approval with respect to approving compensation that is outside of the budget, but with respect to the reallocation of dollars that are under the existing budget, what authority or approval needs to be given, that is a question that I'm still waiting for a response back, and I will update you guys at our next meeting and push for an answer to that. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Where would that authority or approval come from? Who does that need to come from?
The City Council.
Okay.
While we're talking about finances and what it looks like this year versus potentially what it could look like as we continue to operate and we have our staff and everything, I just wanted to provide an update. I have been meeting and reaching out to marketing and communication firms to get some quotes on our marketing as far as a web page internally and externally. And I found a great organization that they are going to provide its Triad marketing and communication. They're gonna send me a proposal. I should have it next week. But it really was a good opportunity, and I think it was a good kind of middle ground for what some members have expressed they were looking for. So they will help with the proposal. There's going to be some different levels based upon price points, so we'll be able to look at that and what could be feasible for us. But what was great looking at it from a financial aspect, they will design the web page so that upfront cost would be significantly more now. And then what they do is they offer an annual fee where they will help with maintenance with the page. So we will still have access to manage the page. They'll provide training, they'll provide support with that annual fee. So as we're thinking about how we can maybe utilize funds this year, since we aren't fully staffed and we have a little bit more flexibility, that might be a great way to utilize those. So I'll have more updates in the proposals, hopefully next board meeting, but I did want to share that because I think it tied in nicely to us talking about the budget.
I just do, I'm sorry.
No, go. No, you go.
I just do want to add, in reference to looking at the budget, the remainder of the budget that we have, if we were to go with $1,000 per person per month, that would be $27,000. If we were to start now, that's how much would be allocated from the existing budget. I also did send a document. It was as comprehensive as I could provide of various boards around the country and what compensation looks like. One thing I did want to point out, if anyone was able to review the information that I sent. So what we are seeing is that established boards, those that have existed for years and so forth, they are usually more likely to, again, be established and also have a volunteer basis or premise. It is the newer boards like that recently established in Cleveland where you'll start seeing that members are requesting compensation. And I think that is largely due to the demands of building a new board. It looks a lot different than coming on to an established board. To your point, Brandon, I do want to retract some previous statements about the mayor's proposal. It is true that the allocation in the mayor's proposal for a Citizen Oversight Review Board was $1,200 annually. It was $1,200 annually. However, I think this is a unique opportunity for us to get to see the work that's involved, for us to, because we are so hands-on, because we're short-staffed, I don't think any of us anticipated that or could have imagined that we would have to do as much as we've done. And we've done that with pride, we've done that with love, and the request is simply, to me, what I think would be reasonable for a new board. I do think, for compensation, I do think in the future, this should be revisited. This may not be something that's permanent as the board begins to flow and function differently. I think the measure of what the request is for compensation could look different, and maybe should, but for a newly established board, again, if you research some of the information that I sent last week, and it's just comprehensive of a lot of boards, Philadelphia, San Jose, it's a bunch, and many of them are volunteer, and many of the newer boards are providing compensation.
Ms. Reed, I apologize. I haven't had the opportunity to fully review what you sent out with respect to that national picture. Is it the trend that most of the time board members were compensated based on a per meeting basis? Do you know if that included like committee or breakout meetings, or just more so like?
It's difficult to get the data because
Probably
even
per-
NACO provided the average, and this was from NACO, the average pay, if you were to look at all of them, is like $200 a meeting, but most of them were far less. But again, most of the boards that compensated $0 or $25, they've been established for a while, and so the workload looks a lot different.
Sure. I think there's probably some cost of living factors based upon like market that like goes into that as well too. You know, I want to be a relayer of information, and so anything that I can do to move forward this conversation with respect to additional information that's helpful, you know, please do let me know.
I do want to note the size of the boards are different. We're a smaller board, so that means that the workload is disseminated a lot differently. When you're in Los Angeles County, you know, they have a lot more members on their Citizen Review Board. Cleveland also has a commission in addition to their Citizens Review Board. So again, the distribution of work looks a lot different. But Brandon, I know from my educational background and having an MBA, it is difficult to review budgets. So I do appreciate you taking on this responsibility. It's a big deal to take a look at this stuff. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Brandon, for all the work you've done on this. I just want to echo what Ms. Reed said. We're a brand-new board. To say that putting this board together has been labor-intensive is an understatement. We have, some of us, not everyone, we have interviewed people. We have put recommendations to hire people. We're spending an immense amount of time away from sitting in this spot doing work for this board, you know, away from this, our Wednesday meetings every other week, hiring people, firing people, training people, and all this is being done, you know, on whatever free time that we can muster up. You know, I'm sorry, you know, the compensation does not equal the labor-intensive work that we have been doing and that we have to continue to do until we have a full staff. So I'm for putting something forward to City Council if we need to, because in this country, people get paid for the work they do. Volunteerism is volunteerism, but volunteerism the definition of volunteerism is not what all the hard work that we're doing. That's not volunteerism in my mind's eye.
I don't want to be frank, but we all have an option to be here. And so I'm more than forward, you know, if, you know, different suggestions or as the board as a consensus sees it fit, you know, for us to, you know, make requests based upon what's appropriate. I think the next step from here is probably getting a little bit additional insight from the law department as to whether or not there needs to be, I guess, any approval for us to move funds under the existing budget, you know, if the board decided to that, and then what the avenues for doing such would be.
Maybe that's a little bit premature. Maybe we should decide as a board if we want to actually put this further.
My last point is this, and I'm not trying to be contentious, but to be brutally honest, and everyone here knows, we're doing work, again, some of us, not everyone, we're doing work that salaried employees we're doing work that salaried employees have to do. And we're doing it for free.
Thank you, everybody. First of all, this is a great moment to say thank you for each and every one of you for the time that you have committed towards this board. I think to the city of Akron, to all of our citizens and police department, and all the great work everybody's done over this time. I can't tell you the immense amount of gratitude that I have for each and every one of you. So thank you. I think to your point, Ms. Richards, similar to how we're going to do with our drafted rules, I think the increase will probably go along the same type of lines to where, hey, there might be a time when we need to actually take a vote on that if we want to move forward. Obviously, tonight is not that night to do that because we are missing some board members. So, Mr. Costa, if you don't have anything else, I'm going to move over to Ms. Richards. Thank you.
Thank you. HR committee met last week as well. We spent a great amount of time with Mr. Fields outlining our expectations, and he did an excellent job tonight with what we relayed to him. And then we also talked about hiring for our new independent auditor, for a independent auditor. We would like to turn it over to the city to do the advertising for that and the initial screenings, that type of thing. I sent out, that's not a job description, it's for the posting, giving general duties and what experience, that type of thing. You got those, I don't know, yesterday or early today. So I would like us to make a decision on that, and also to decide they need a pay scale for that position, and we need to make a decision about that as well.
Mr. Chairman? Yes. As I told Ms. Richardson on the elevator, I only had a very short time to review it. Obviously, the name of the title of its, has to conform to the charter, but I think the duties do too. So my guess is that posting is going to need some work, probably best done in committee. The salary range, though, that's something that, has the committee considered that in making a recommendation, or is that a committee issue too?
I reached out to Mr. Costa to discuss that, and he did recommend, what was it, 75 to 92, what did you recommend? I'm sorry, 80, I can't remember now.
So the range that I provided, so we budgeted for this year $82,183 for Mr. Young's 2023 salary. And there was $76,000 that was budgeted for the deputy auditor salary. And so I would say a range between 75K to 90,000 would probably be a range that but keep in mind though, our ultimate salary number that we end up with is gonna have other budgetary implications. So, that could result in a reduced, budget for our deputy auditor. So, but I think that, a range somewhere between 75 and 90,000 would be reasonable based upon the 82,000 that was budgeted for Mr. Young's salary this year.
I have a question. The auditors, the administrative assistants, the independent auditor, the deputy auditor, and the administrative assistants, do their salary, does their vacation time and sick time and all that, does that come out of our budget as well? Or just their pay?
No, that all of it comes out of our budget as well too. This was that was just a pure salary range that was provided.
Also, the health insurance and all that comes out of our budget too?
Yes.
Yes.
Huh.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Do we have data about national salary ranges for this sort of position?
Yes, we do, and that can be retrieved on NACO's website. If you guys have your computer, you can go there. You can see, just type in NACO job postings. In my opinion, and I'm going to use Mr. Young as a reference point. Mr. Young was a decorated police officer who has served, I want to say he's served 20 plus years, retired, and then came into this position. And so with respect to what police officers are already paid, and considering that this, would require some specialized training, probably education, I just think that salary range is a bit low. But again, you can look at some of the salary ranges on the NACO website, type in NACO job postings, and you can just kind of see. I'd like us to be higher. I think for the police auditor position, we should start at least 90,000. That's a new person coming in. If I were hiring someone like Mr. Young, I'd be around 115,000 for his expertise, everything that he brought to the position, retired, coming back. We're in 2023. Eggs are high. So I just want to be clear. I think we might need to request additional funds in our budget for next year if we're looking for qualified individuals to be willing to come to Akron and serve in that position.
Okay, there are a couple positions, and maybe Ms. Atkins, you can clarify this, that the board, what you had told us, some of them are under the umbrella of the city, and one administrative assistant position is, and one is not. Do you remember what we're talking about? when you guys had us in the classified and unclassified. So do those budgets come out of our, do those, the classified and unclassified positions, does any of those two positions come out of the city's budget, or they all just come out of our budget? All of them?
Every department is responsible, their employees' pay, insurance, everything related to that employee comes out of that department's budget. Similarly, if any employees under the board here, under this, assigned here to the board, will come out of that budget. And whatever salary you set health insurance is generally, you may tack on probably an additional 20 grand approximately. Think about it that way.
Wow.
Or more. It's family.
Thank you.
So with the posting, where is the term Inspector General coming from?
That was my mistake. That was the title from the city's version.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay.
And just to throw it out there, you know, there's a couple of competing different things. Yes, we could request additional funding next year. I've not been involved with an annual budgetary process, and maybe you all could speak to the likelihood or the probability of additional spending increases being granted from finance. And if you've got any insight on that, I'd love to hear from you all.
The budget is very tight, so departments have a hard time staffing and getting employees, especially if they're benefits eligible. Our salaries are not high here, so the $75,000 is a pretty good salary for a city employee. $90,000 is high for a city employee.
Thank you. So another factor to consider as well too is that, you know, we could also pull from the deputy auditor position. But at the end of the day, you know, we're gonna get what we pay for.
Absolutely.
So I'll just leave it at that, except to Ms. Anaskevich, unless it's us. You know. No, I was making a joke. I said you get what you pay for unless it's us, members of the board.
So the,
Also, there is generally an annual cost of living adjustment that is made for employees.
okay. So, I'll go ahead.
And I'd imagine that annual COLA adjustment would probably be pegged a little higher given the increased inflation that we've seen this year? Or is it a fixed?
3% for next year.
Okay.
So, Mr. Costa, is our budget right now, what we got this year, is this the 372 number?
Yes, that was the budget original.
Okay, got it. So whatever we don't spend this year, we have to give back, is that how it goes?
Yes. Unless it's been encumbered already towards a future obligation, such as Mr. Fields'
So nothing rolls over?
Correct.
So out of the 75,000, that I believe that was the last figure you mentioned, you said something else. You know, there's a projected cost that will come out of that as well. What was that again?
That was the Nicola conference, the retreat, the meet and greets, and the website.
Do we have costs for those things? Like the NACOL conference, do we know how much that is? I know you were gonna go. You said
Oh, it's gonna be about 2,500 or so with travel, maybe 3,000.
About that before.
The price has gone up. I think I actually got in before they, oops, sorry. It may be higher, but at figure 2,500 to 3,000 when all said and done.
I'd say probably $5,000 per person with lodging, and then we would probably want to provide like
Well,
we provide
no,
food
they
for-
have a reserve block of rooms at about $250 a night, which is, for Chicago, is crazy. So I think it's gonna cost me about 2,500, but there's a lot of meals just in the course of it, but figure 2,500, 3,000, probably not 5,000.
And a lot of those conferences already have breakfast for you and that kind of stuff. But that aside, well, I guess we'll get to that on here. We still need to send someone else. But there was something else you had mentioned out of the 70, was that it? Just the NACO conference and the,
NACO, the second part of our retreat, our meet and greets for the community, and the website.
how much is the retreat?
I was going to say, I'd have to pull up the agreement again, but I believe it was about $2,500.
Yeah, we're not trying to figure
Okay,
out money
okay.
right now, are we? Like, we can do that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a ballpark in my head.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out, we need to get this job posted.
Yeah.
We're
So-
gonna run out of time.
So do we just have to go back and just correct the whole inspector general? That's just correcting and putting independent
Yeah,
auditor?
put auditor in, that's.
Well, no, sorry, go ahead, Mr. Gippen.
I was just going to say, no, the job duties need to conform to the charter. So it's not, that needs fixed too. I mean, I don't know.
Oh, this is not in alignment, is what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah, and I had sent out an email earlier. I thought, is this supposed to be in replacement of the auditor? But I didn't get an answer back.
Oh, so do we need to review this? We need to review this and obviously revisit it in the next meeting, or can we do something online and vote on it?
No, we can't. The Sunshine Grant.
We're reviewing it right now?
We're in open meeting. We cannot do it online.
Okay, so we're coming back in 2 weeks, but you said you needed,
You can call a special meeting, Mr. Chairman. You can call a special meeting.
We can review it in our committee meeting next week.
We will still need to review whatever you present. The job descriptions are based on what job titles there are. The title is independent police auditor. We have to make sure in HR, for every job in the city, we make sure that it fits properly in terms of what types of duties have to be included in there. If you have some ideas that you feel that you want to address in terms of, you know, some other duties, Bob, if you feel there's something you have to just let us know, and we'll take a look at that to see if that jives with that job description.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm
But
that
it says
confused-
Inspector General.
That confuses me a bit. It seems to me that the charter prevails. If the charter created the position, the charter defined broadly the duties of the position. The posting has to have that.
Those should be covered with take a look at what Stacy had
Well,
provided for all.
I mean, I didn't have much time to look, but I mean, most obviously, it's not liaison. I mean, the OIPA has distinct investigatory powers, whether before, during, or after. All of that has to be in the charter. It is not, in my view, the posting must conform to the charter regardless. It is not a matter of conforming to the city. The charter, I think, must prevail.
so isn't there just like, and again, I apologize for being like just a simple, easy person. Don't we already have a job description for an auditor? Like, can we just update it?
So I think that's where we may need clarification. What is the difference between a job posting and then the job description that we are provided with?
The job description is more just plain facts, and this posting is basically the job description with some other information added. You can also add additional, preferences if you want.
I just know I was thoroughly confused.
Hold on, Ms. Anaskevich, go ahead.
Creating language, maybe a little bit about the city, a little bit about your mission or your values, you can put those things in the posting.
So,
Do we have something from before
right.
that we can just review?
It's just, it has the wrong title in it.
Also, that is the thing, that's the one from before.
Okay. So Inspector General, that was just an oversight.
It was a mistake.
Okay.
Yeah, but what Mr. Gippen is saying, and I don't know, he's saying, does the previous, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Gippen, you're saying we need to make sure that the charter's description of the independent auditor aligns with that job posting. And if it doesn't, then the charter takes priority over whatever that previous job posting was. So you're saying the HR committee needs to review the job posting and make sure that it aligns with the charter. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Well, again, and I don't want to, open up this can of worms again, but again, based on previous conversations this committee has already had, the duties also have to be, cannot conflict. If there's some, in terms of what the charter says the duties are, we need to make sure that's vetted out, okay? So we can't have conflict in the duties with what the union contract says, okay? Again, so these are things that, in terms of what that charter language describes the duties to be, is something we will have to make sure is appropriate.
So it'll need to be tweaked.
I would propose that we review in our HR subcommittee, and as much as possible, steer away from that specific issue. We can do the review, we can do a broader language for a job posting, I believe. That's just my recommendation.
Well, I think we're going to potentially have some problems with our ultimate hire if we have not incorporated what the charter says about those duties. I think, again, the charter doesn't specify as to when, we don't have to have things like investigate at any time. That doesn't belong in the description or the posting. But I think it clearly has to incorporate what the charters gives the OIPA specific powers, in addition to giving us specific powers. And again, if we're going to get into a thing about conflict with the FOP agreement about that, well, then the city will tell us that. But in my view, the charter prevails. That is what the voters voted, and the person we hire has got to be doing the job the charter calls for, not something else.
So, Ms. Richards, if you and your team can look at the charter, I think it's under item D in the charter. Section 2, item D. Yeah, so if y'all can just look at it, make sure that language is there. Then, Yamini, can they connect with you to?
Yeah, I first would suggest, look at the stuff that Stacy has submitted, take a look at that first. If you have questions, if you think there's something that needs to be included, just contact us. I don't want to open up this issue before we've even looked at the language, so I think it should be sufficient. But if there's something there, let's take a look at it. We're open to doing that.
I did take a look at it, and I didn't see any conflict, but I also don't have a legal eye. I actually have 20-something else vision. But I didn't see any conflict with the exception of the title, which is easily changeable.
Yeah.
But again, I think we can all take a look at it. It's prudent to do so.
Yeah. I mean, it describes the independent auditor position from what I read. My only issue was the title, and that's what threw me off, Inspector General.
Let's work it through. Hopefully we're not going to get into an issue about this. It just mainly it's not so much conflict, but it needs to I think has to clearly incorporate the charter language so that that's in it, so that we've met that burden of saying this is the person we're hiring is going to do the charter duties. And the rest of it, there probably is no conflict, but it needs to be looked at and hopefully worked through.
We just insert that line that the Inspector General shall be
maybe.
required.
Well, the Inspector General. It probably is mostly insertion, and if there's anything in here which it looks like it doesn't work, hopefully it's not going to be that hard. Hopefully not that hard, but it does need to incorporate the charter powers.
Okay.
I think for the sake of efficiency and keeping things moving, if we could have a kind of a, not necessarily a joint meeting, but a back-to-back meeting of governance and the HR committee, similar to what we did last Wednesday, then I think that could be incredibly productive for us to move forward something, to get it over to the city, for them to approve, and for us to move forward on.
Yeah, that's the plan. That's the schedule. I think the room's already been reserved, right?
All right. Ms. Richards, anything else?
That still doesn't answer the salary question.
Say that again?
It doesn't answer the salary range. We just can't post it without it. We need to.
For what it's worth, I mean, I thought what Ms. Reed said sounded right to me. I mean, but we clearly, we need to be in the market. We can't, you know, and if you've looked at the data, so if 90 looked right to you, then it's probably 90.
So, Ms. Richards, based on your data, does that have the size of city? Based on what that auditor was paid? Size of city?
Yeah, sure. It lists, I'll give you a few.
What is comparable to Akron, I would say?
So let's look at Orleans Parish, 90 to 120,000. Fort Worth, Texas, 180,000 to 222,000. I'll be back. I'm going to put in for that job. Boulder, Colorado, 112 to 180. San Francisco. So these are larger cities. Cleveland, Ohio, 55 to 75,000, but it's a senior investigator. It's a little different. It's not what an auditor is. Similar.
And then, you know, there's a starting salary too, so you know, you have to leave room for increases.
I'm trying to find a similar sized city, which of course I can't find.
So would a 75,000 to 100,000 be an okay range in your opinion, Ms. Reed?
I honestly don't think I'm the best person to answer this question.
I think that should depend on the person's background and skill sets and skill level.
Well, that's why you got the range, right?
Right, but you also have a range for a period of time where they might need, you know, require increases in their salary. So if you start off with a salary that's very, very high, that doesn't leave, for someone who's just beginning, that doesn't leave a lot of room for increases over a period of 5 years, 10 years, or whatever.
Stacy?
This range, this is an unclassified position, so this range is just for the posting. So you can choose any year, or if the person is doing well, you have the power.
You can increase them based on.
Right, but you don't want to start them at the top dollar.
I'm not saying start them at the top dollar, but I don't think I want to start somebody at 125 either.
Yeah. I'd
rather have,
and largely I feel.
I'd rather have a range that we're starting with, and so, because again, you want to attract people.
You want to attract people, but I'm not familiar with, Deputy Harden, would you mind answering this question? What is a fair salary range for?
Police officer tops out, I think it's 74 for police officer. We have to pay sergeants 15% more than that, so mid-80s. I don't know if I can answer that question. I can tell you what currently my officers pay.
Yeah, that's.
I also wanted to note that Mr. Young was in his role for 15 years, and so what was budgeted for his compensation reflects the continued increases based upon his service and his tenure as well, too.
Exactly.
So, and also, I do want to bring up that, city benefits are really amazing, and that's one of the things that is attractive to a role as this.
And you know, experience and expertise should definitely be considered for whatever the starting salary is.
So do we need to vote on this? Because I see, Ms. Richards, you're still looking for.
Well, they need direction. I mean, they're literally going to put the numbers on the paper. So I would put forth a motion that we vote for a pay range of 75 to 100,000 for the posting.
I'm in that. We want to vote? You make a move?
Second.
Aniskevich?
For the posting?
Yes.
All right.
I don't know what that means.
Is that a starting salary range, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, okay.
Aniskevich?
Yes?
Gibbon?
Yes.
Castle?
Yes.
Costa?
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Reed? Boyd, yes. Congratulations. Anything else, Ms. Richards?
No, sir.
Awesome. Community engagement, our chair, Ms. Lewis, is not here on this evening. I didn't know, Ms. Castle, if you had anything.
I can kick it off and then I'll pass it over to Mr. Gibbon because I know he was going to speak on behalf of some of what we worked on this week. So I just wanted to bring it first and foremost. We talked to Ms. Lewis and she was going to propose to the board having another meet, eat, and greet on October 4th, I believe the 14th. It's either the 14th or the 15th, that Saturday. So I guess it's up for discussion if anybody wanted to motion moving forward with that. But before we moved forward with planning, I thought it was imperative that we had a discussion as a board, and also that it came before everybody to decide if we were going to move forward with planning for that event. So the conversation was that it was going to be very similar to the last event. It was just going to be at a different location, and we were not going to have food this time, and we were going to have some additional resources available with the resource tables. So
I say we table that until we have an opportunity to discuss the first meet and greet and learn from everyone on the board, and from whatever feedback we may have gotten from the public, what we did right, what could be done differently, what might need to be refined. I think we never discussed that first meet, eat, and greet. We never discussed it as a board. It should have been discussed, and until it is discussed, I'm voting no on any further meet and greets until it's discussed. Because anything and everything we do out here in the public reflects the entire board and every single person on this board. So I think it needs to be discussed first, and we need to have a consensus on how we want these things to go, because it's going to reflect all of us.
So, Ms. Anastasia, you're saying that we should table it to further discussion?
Yes,
Thank you.
that's.
Mr. Gippen?
Mr. Chairman, I wish Ms. Lewis were here, but, it was discussed in committee, and I mean, as these things should be. And what happened in the past, the previous one was discussed and sorted through, and, among other things, there'll be no food. I think that it's important that we continue the momentum, that we have the meet and greet. And exactly how we do it, that can be decided. But I think that the question of whether we should have a meet and greet or not, I think is one that we should agree on now. And given that, we're getting the amount of time it takes to actually implement it, I think it's appropriate to decide it tonight. I mean, the committee, my understanding was from the committee recommendation was going to be to do it on October 14th, the Saturday.
All due respect, it wasn't discussed with the entire board, and
No.
it should have been. It should have been.
Mr. Chairman, I disagree. I think these matters are initially processed in committee and brought to the board. And I think it was done appropriately by that committee. And I think the recommendation that we have a meet and greet at the Northwest Center on Saturday, October 14th, 10 to 2, 10 to 3, I think is a good recommendation, and I will so move.
I think that we need to discuss the first one first, and then talk about, I'm not against you having it, but it was never discussed, and there were problems with that first one, and you know that there were, and we need to discuss it first before we move on to another one.
So,
Because everything reflects everyone on this board.
Ms. Anaskevich, so here's what we're going to do. Let's table it. Let's table this discussion until Ms. Lewis is here, because I think that we have to have that conversation while she is in the room and she's here.
Chair, I'm
Yes.
sorry. I completely agree with you, with the exception that we'll have one more meeting before, because I think we'll be meeting on October the 4th. I was just taking a look at the calendar.
You're right.
And so the next week it'll be here, and I think it's unfortunate that we're not able to have that discussion today, but I don't think it would be wise to table it.
Okay. So,
Mr. Chairman, I've made a motion. It lacks a second.
Second.
I would like to go forward with it. If there's a motion to table, then the motion to
Okay.
table can be considered.
so we're voting whether or not we're having this on the 14th.
Well, I think we should. I mean, we
Okay,
can
you
just-
made a motion for it,
I did.
right?
I
You
did.
seconded it, correct? Now we're voting. Any more discussion?
I just would like to say, I think there was some great takeaways from the event that we had before, but I think there are also other ways that we can view community engagement. So as a board, we get invites all the time to different activities, and I think when we talk about community engagement, it doesn't have to be these events organized by a committee. There's other ways for us to engage and maybe gain different perspectives or connect with different citizens and community members and police officers in a different format than necessarily these meet, eat, and greet. So I'm gonna vote how I'm gonna vote, but I really think it's imperative for us to start looking at how we can engage. So for example, we had a great invitation as a board to participate in the Summit County Prosecutors Citizens Academy, and I thought that was one great way. And for us, we had another one, I forget the name of it, but we got an email from, I'm blanking, oh, the Yours and Mine event and how we can participate in that. We got another one from Dr. Goggins for the Education Day that they're doing on the 29th and the 30th that we've been invited as a board. So I think when we talk about how important it is to engage, it doesn't have to be this organized event that the board is facilitating and coordinating. There's other ways that we can engage. So for me, the push to push another one on the 14th when we haven't officially, we have debriefed the event as a committee, but there were some things that we still needed to work out. I just wanted to make those points.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to say, I don't think these are mutually exclusive. I mean, there's a whole lot to do on community engagement. But the meet and greet I thought was very successful, and it was, and should be done again. You know, that's all I'm saying. And I think just as a matter of process, the committee unanimously voted to make this recommendation tonight. I mean, if Ms. Lewis were here, she would have been making this motion.
Well, she's not here.
Well, she's not here. But the point is that you know, a number of us were in the committee meeting. And as a matter of process, that's the committee's recommendation. And I think it's a good idea. We can talk and have plenty of discussion. I would submit it should be in committee, not in the whole board, about the details of how it can be done better.
I think if anything that we do as a subcommittee outside of these walls, if we feel that it needs to be, any event that we put on, I think that we should discuss it after after the event has taken place. It needs to be discussed amongst the entire board to see what we thought went well, what we thought might need refinement, what we thought maybe we shouldn't do again. Why can't that be the whole board's input?
Well, I'm gonna move back. I think Ms. Anaskevich, I think procedurally what we'll do is we'll have those discussions in the committee meeting, to Mr. Gibbons' point. And so if we want to have that feedback, we do that, then attend the community engagement subcommittee.
So you want the entire board to attend the community engagement
I think
subcommittee
I think if we have feedback to give, yes. If there's feedback that you feel like you want to give to that committee, I think you should attend the community engagement subcommittee.
Along with all the other, okay.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, like, if you got feedback, I think that's where it needs to be said at, is in the community engagement subcommittee. I don't think it needs to be said in an open meeting.
Okay.
I think it's said in that committee meeting.
Okay,
So,
well, how many weeks ago was that?
so,
Meet, eat, and greet?
I don't know,
And I'm just now hearing this, so okay.
okay. So, but I think that's proper procedure, though. Like, if you wanted to, or reach out to the chair, you can reach out to the chair one-on-one to have some of that too.
I have tried.
Or send an email or a text her to say, hey, I think.
I have tried, and I sent an email, and the Sunshine Grinch said.
No, I'm saying you can just send a one-on-one email to her. You don't have to send it to the whole board. You're just sending it to the committee chair. Just like if I have a question about HR, I'm just going to send it to Ms. Richards. And she'll take that back to.
Right. Well, you guys can vote on, I'm, okay.
And so,
I'm voting no. No on the 14th. I will not be there.
yes, Ms. Reed.
I'm concerned about the time. It's just, it's almost here, and we just don't have enough information about what's going on. I do remember Ms. Lewis did tell us about the format. I was really hoping we could just hear a little bit more today about the expectations, you know, who we could expect to attend, and we're just kind of going in blind, in my opinion. And we haven't heard any. I would love to hear more about what you guys discussed at what's taking place, but I feel like I'm just kind of showing up without really being prepared on, you know, what's going to be expected of us. And this is like 2 weeks away, 3 weeks.
I mean, you all can vote on it if you want, but I won't be there.
Did you have some, Mr. Costa?
No, one of our members of the community was just sharing an upcoming community event that's going to be going on that they would love to see us at.
Yeah, what is that event? Oh, yeah, NAMI Walks is a huge thing. Yeah.
That's the same day as
Yep.
the proposed event we're talking about.
Thank you so much,
What's it called?
Reverend Joyce. So we wanna vote here?
Yes.
All right. Aniskevich,
What are we voting for again, please?
October the 14th, community engagement, next event. Aniskevich,
No.
Gippin,
Yes.
Castle,
No.
Costa,
No.
Richards,
No.
Reed,
No.
Boyd, no. All right. Anything else from community engagement?
Well, I don't know that this is
It's not your turn.
tonight, not my day. Well, there is, on the question of the survey, which we talked about it previously, the committee voted to recommend to the board that we enter into an agreement with Center for Marketing and Opinion Research to conduct a survey. And Ms. Lewis was going to present it, although I've also worked on it. I'm going to just ask this question. Do y'all want to deal with this tonight or not? I don't want to waste any more time with it. Doing about engaging to have a survey done.
I'd rather we kind of have that discussion more so with Ms. Lewis is here,
Okay,
if that's okay.
so be it.
So do we got a cost?
I agree.
Do we have a cost, like a?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of information,
Oh, yeah.
but I think clearly the sentiment of the board is not to just take it up tonight. So.
No, but the only thing I want to know is the cost.
Yeah, $19,000.
No,
19.
There's a range. We were going to propose the lowest range of it, which is, I want to say 12 something.
Oh, okay. That's all I want to know. All right, we'll table that next week. Anything else, Mr. Gippin or Ms.
No.
Castle? All right, thanks so much for the Community Engagement Subcommittee. That relieves our subcommittee report out. Now we have some new business. Board retreat follow-up. Who put this on the agenda? Hey. Thank you, sir.
As of now, the date of November 4th has been proposed for us to have a follow-up Part 2 board retreat for our strategic planning event. I've got a consensus that November 4th seems to work for everybody. Is there anybody who it doesn't work for? We can host it again at my law firm. Barb only needs 2 of our hours, and we could do 10 to 12, 8 to 10, 2 to 4. No, not 2 to 4. It's college football. 10 to 12.
I would like to do 10 to 12.
Okay. I don't think that's something that we really need to vote on, but awesome.
Is that a Saturday?
That is a Saturday, yes, Saturday, November 4th, the year our Lord 2023. Yeah, we'll meet at Buckingham, Doolittle Burrows, Akron Fairlawn office, 3800 Embassy Parkway, Suite 100.
Do we know if everyone did the survey for her or not? If everyone did it, do we know? Did she?
I did
say?
mine.
I did mine. Did she say?
She did not clarify.
Okay.
She wanted to prioritize dates, and so we could wrap up with our strategic plan.
Okay.
Okay, another new business item. Ms. Castle brought this up, but I received a call from Mr. Willie Smith. He is the chair of Yours and Mine Akron Community Civic Organization, inviting us out on October the 12th. It's a Thursday from 6 to 7:30. They would host us. They would like for all of us to come because they want to talk about the Oversight Board. They have a couple of things. They want to talk about the purpose of the Oversight Board, the pros and cons to the Oversight Board, and the next steps for the Oversight Board. And so dinner is going to be served at 6 o'clock. So it's going to be held at the Robinson CLC over on the east side, 1156 4th Street. I let him know that we are very grateful for the invitation and we would love to attend. So all those who are able, let's go.
There needs to be public notice. That will need to be an open meeting.
Okay. Got it.
Even if we're not calling the meeting?
Correct.
That's what we have Ms. Castle for. She'll make sure that happens.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Castle.
Yeah, it
Alrighty.
sounds like a
Right, good. Another
And that-
community engagement thing we get into, and also we have that Friday, that Saturday, we have NAMI walks, so.
Please take pictures. It'd be great if our annual report isn't just a bunch of words.
Thank you,
I'll be
Mr.
there, I'll
Costa.
take pictures, but if there's something I'm not at, please take pictures. Please send them to me. Please don't take embarrassing or bad angles.
Thank you, Mr. Costa, I appreciate
Well,
it.
then you can use automatic eraser. I used mine for the first time. It really does work.
All right, we're getting off track, thank you pretty much, I thank you. So we're gonna move on to old business. I think we already talked about the
No,
the NACO
we did,
conference,
but we
right?
did not, we need to talk about whether we're gonna send 2 people and not just one, not just.
Who wants to go?
So there was conversation, Miss Lewis had reached out and said she was interested in attending, but she was gonna follow up with her work schedule. Is that by Costa's face, I'm assuming that might be a no-go.
She informed me
I
that she
have
will
a-
not be attending.
Well, I was wondering if, I think Mr. Fields might need to go, because he is the auditor right now.
So it'd be you and Mr. Fields? That would be-
Not me, I'll be on a cruise, I can't go. I'm suggesting that another
Is
person.
this that full life you're living?
I'm
Going on
sorry?
a cruise?
Is it
That
what?
full life you're living, going on a cruise?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
So,
So actually, we're leaving the day after the retreat. That's why I asked how long, I wanted to know how long the retreat is. I
So,
think
Mr.
it makes
Fields.
sense for Mr. Fields to go, that we should send him simply because he is our auditor under contract right now. And as it was mentioned earlier, we want the best of the best, and we also want him to continue to get the best knowledge that he can get.
Mr. Chairman, with respect to Mr. Fields, I don't think that would be a wise use of our money. I don't think there's any expectation at this point that we're going to have a long-term relationship with you, Mr. Fields. And I think that, for the amount of money that is going to be spent, and also just the acquisition of the knowledge, it's a wonderful conference. From what I could see, I think it would make great sense for another board member to be there. I would love to not just be on my own. But I don't think that we should send Mr. Fields.
Well, we don't know how long-term any of us are going to be here, for that matter.
well, we do.
We have terms.
Yeah.
Well,
actually
we
do.
don't know. Someone could quit.
Yeah. So, is there another board member that would like to attend? When is it again?
November
It's,
6th.
no, it's
Fifth.
I'm traveling on the 11th. I'm not sure it's basically the 12th, 3 days plus half day on the 16th. 12, 13, 14.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
no, That's no good.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's Sunday, Sunday's the 12th, so it's basically 3.5 days.
Okay.
It's over noon on the Thursday.
Okay. So if there is another board member that would like to go, please let Brandon know. Is that kind of the process?
Okay.
How are we?
Can I say one other thing?
Please.
I think if only one board member goes, then no one should go. There needs to be 2 board members going.
With respect, Mr. Chairman, I've already made my reservation. I
Yeah.
am going.
Okay,
Yes.
well, we need some, I'm just saying, okay, you're going. I'm not saying you can't go. I'm not your mom. I'm saying one other person needs to go.
Okay, but Ms. Sanaskevich, we're not going to say that if there's not another person to go, that nobody should go in. I mean, I think you commented before how everybody has full-time jobs, and so it's just challenging to always take off and go. So I think one of us going is very beneficial. Mr. Gibbon can bring back a wealth of knowledge and understanding that would be beneficial to us. If there is someone else that has the capacity to go, please let the board know, let Mr. Costa know, and I think we can go from there. Is that everybody?
I do recall Mr. Peoples did say he was interested in going. He said that at our retreat, that he would be interested in going, so.
So we can follow up with Mr. Peoples.
I'll send him an email right now.
Thank you so much.
I
Right.
have one other thing to say. Look, we need more than one perspective from a conference like this. That's the only reason why I believe more than one person should go. That's all. We need more than one perspective.
Mr. Costa's going to reach out to Mr. Peoples if he's able to go. That's something that as a board, we're taking care of for them?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else regarding this?
I do want to just really quickly say, if we are able to fill our auditor position before November, that would probably be the person we could try to send as well. It's an option.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, if we manage that, absolutely, that
Yeah,
person should go.
absolutely. Yeah, I saw your hand going to the button.
Y'all are fine.
All right. So, I'm going to make a motion to move into executive session to discuss some personnel matters, that concern our board. So can I get a second?
Second.
Aniskevich?
Yes.
Gippin?
Yes.
Castle?
Yes.
Costa?
Yes.
Reed?
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
All
Thank
right.
you for sending that.
Let's go into executive session. Thank you, everybody.